A woman who's originally from Saranac Lake was having trouble finding a way to describe to her children what it was like for their grandfather, who had suffered a stroke. He had lost the ability to talk and read and write, a condition known as aphasia. That's when Langdon Cook decided to write a book, and she was able to explain what their grandfather was going through the eyes and senses of his therapy dog, named Ruby. Here's our Jack LaDuke.
There are millions of families affected each year by stroke and aphasia, a stroke-related illness. The book is a tribute to therapy dogs and her father's voyage when returning from the hospital. Bruce Langdon had a stroke 7 years ago, and Laura's children had a hard time understanding what happened to their grandfather, or Papa, as they called him.
We went to the library and looked around it for some children's books on strokes, and we really couldn't find much about it. There were only 1 or 2 books out there. And so I started to get this little bug of an idea that maybe I should try to write something down for them. And so when I started to write, I actually wanted to write it from their perspective about their papa. And I had many drafts with Cody and Elizabeth, who are my kids, talking about how they were feeling about that. And it just didn't seem like a lot of fun.
The author said that she had been around dogs all her life and knew many of their ways. That's why she decided to write her story through the senses of the dog and knowing that children could understand it better.
I guess I just tried to envision, if I was Ruby, what it would have been like. And you know, for dogs, sense is just a huge part of how they navigate the world. And so one of the things I wanted to do was to have every place and every person have a certain particular scent that reminded them of something. So like in this story, the little boy Joey at school reminds her of peanut butter, and the little girl Emma reminds Ruby of strawberries, and Connie, my mom, smells like chocolate chip cookies. And so that was one of the things, was having smell be a huge part of that.
I love the big guy best. He brings me to his office every day. It smells like wood smoke. He has a nice big blanket on the floor next to his desk so I can protect him from those crazy chipmunks that chatter outside of his office. I fear the chipmunks might attack one day, so I have to stay on high alert at all times, except when I'm sleeping. Then the big guy's on his own.
Before Laura's father's stroke, he had been a caretaker at a large Adirondack camp. He took his Labrador Retriever, Ruby, to work with him daily. She loved being with him and taking in the smells of the wilderness. Prior to his stroke, Bruce Langdon had trained Ruby as a therapy dog. The two visited the hospital for several years before Langdon's stroke, which brought an end to their hospital visits. After his stroke, the role changed. Ruby became her master's therapy dog.
You could just see my dad sort of light up as soon as he saw her. And then when my dad was resting, my mom would bring Ruby around to the rest of the patients in the hospital. And there's something about having a therapy dog, when people are not doing well in a hospital, that just gives them some hope, I think, and gives them some joy.
The author feels that her father's old friend Ruby is a hero, and for good reason.
Ruby was a huge part of his therapy and his recovery. He would go outside, and he had to learn how to throw the ball. He had to learn how to bring her for walks again. And so she was just a huge motivation with his recovery.
The stroke victim's longtime wife, Connie Langdon, took special care of her husband and Ruby. She talked about aphasia that affected her husband.
People, when they hear somebody has a stroke, they think, oh, they're going to be paralyzed on one side, or they won't be able to walk. But a lot of people, I don't think, realize that aphasia is a big part of having a stroke. And a lot of people recover from that. It may take days or weeks or whatever, but they may recover. But there's a lot of people out there that don't ever recover from the aphasia part of it. So
the author said that she poured a lot of her feelings into her writing. It's hard, she said, when you see someone you love with an illness and are powerless to help. While recovery is slow, Bruce Langdon is able to take Ruby for daily walks. The author said that what also helps is knowing that you have a loving family and Ruby at her papa's side all the time. For Mountain Lake Journal, I'm Jack LaDuke in Saranac Lake.